Imagine sitting by a quiet river. The golden hues of the sunset reflecting on the gentle ripples. There is no rush. No noise, just the steady rhythm of your breath and the peaceful stillness of the moment. In a world that often emphasizes social connections and external validation, we are told that being alone is something to fear, that growing older without a crowd of friends means isolation and sadness. But what if this perspective is limiting? What if loneliness is not an emptiness, but rather a doorway to something deeper? A doorway to freedom, serenity, and self-discovery. Buddhism teaches us that attachment to external sources of validation is one of the greatest causes of suffering. We spend so much of our lives seeking approval, fearing rejection, and clinging to relationships. Yet, true happiness does not come from the number of people around us, it comes from the relationship we cultivate with ourselves. So, as we age and our social circles naturally change, how can we grow older with peace of mind? How can we learn to embrace solitude and see it not as loneliness, but as an opportunity for growth and inner strength? Let's take a journey into this exploration together. 1. A shift in perspective with age. As we age, there is often a profound shift in the way we view our relationships and our social needs. When we are younger, we tend to define ourselves by our connections with others. We measure our worth through the number of friends we have, how socially active we are, and how much we are liked. Social validation becomes an unconscious goal, and we may believe that the more friends we have, the more fulfilled we are. But with time, we begin to see that many of these relationships were based on convenience, shared environments, or temporary emotions, rather than genuine, lasting connections. This shift is not a sign of becoming antisocial, it's a sign of personal growth. As we age, the desire for large social circles fades, replaced by a deeper appreciation for solitude, more selective relationships, and connections that hold true meaning. Buddhism teaches that attachment is the root of suffering. We cling to friendships and social circles because we fear loneliness. But the truth is that nothing is permanent. People change, circumstances shift, and the friendships that once felt essential may no longer serve our evolving lives. The real challenge in aging is learning to find peace within ourselves, rather than relying on others for our happiness. At some point in life, we realize that true peace doesn't come from constant socializing or from being surrounded by others, it comes from being at peace with ourselves. This understanding often marks the dividing line between those who struggle with aging and those who embrace it. There are two types of people in this context. One group grows older and feels an emptiness because they never learned to be comfortable with solitude. They crave constant social interaction, fearing that being alone equates to loneliness. These individuals often find themselves holding on to friendships that have outlived their usefulness, only to feel more disconnected when these relationships inevitably fade. On the other hand, some individuals embrace solitude and find joy in simple things, a morning sunrise, a good book, a quiet cup of tea. They realize that life's greatest pleasures often come from internal experiences, not external validation or social engagement. This transformation isn't just personal, it's a pattern seen among some of the world's most powerful and influential figures. Take Warren Buffett, for example. Despite being one of the wealthiest men in the world, Buffett spends much of his time alone, reading, reflecting, and making decisions. He leads a simple life in Omaha, valuing solitude over large social circles. His closest relationships are based on intellectual depth, not social obligation. Similarly, Barack Obama, after leaving the presidency, has spoken about how much he now values time for reflection and careful selection of people he surrounds himself with. He no longer feels the need to be constantly in the public eye but instead seeks meaningful connections and personal peace. Steve Jobs, known for his minimalist lifestyle and deep introspection, often emphasized that true creativity and insight come from solitude, not from constant interaction with others. As we age, the decline in our social needs should be seen as a liberation, not a loss. We no longer need to maintain relationships out of obligation. We no longer need to please everyone or seek external validation to feel complete. The goal is not to avoid solitude but to embrace it. For those who understand this shift, aging becomes a journey of freedom and inner peace. For those who resist it, the fear of being alone becomes a struggle. Ultimately, the ability to be content in solitude is one of the most liberating lessons that aging can teach. 2. Independence, the key to true happiness. Throughout history, some of the most enlightened and successful individuals have realized that true happiness comes from within, not from external validation or social approval. The Buddha himself exemplified this understanding when he left behind his palace, family, and status to seek enlightenment. He recognized that attachment to people, possessions, and expectations only leads to suffering. As we grow older, we naturally undergo a similar shift in perspective. The need to please others, maintain superficial relationships, or constantly prove ourselves slowly fades away. Instead, we begin to embrace a life of simplicity, authenticity, and inner peace. As we age, we also find freedom from the pressures of social expectations. No longer do we need to maintain relationships out of obligation. For many of us, years may have been spent nurturing connections out of a sense of duty rather than genuine affection. With time, we learn that relationships should be a choice, not a chore. We are no longer responsible for keeping up with people who no longer add value to our lives. Similarly, the need to please everyone diminishes as we grow older. In youth, we seek approval. In adulthood, we chase success. But as we age, we realize that our happiness should not depend on others' opinions. Some of the most powerful figures in history reached their peak when they stopped caring about social expectations and focused instead on what truly mattered to them. The constant pressure to achieve, compete, and be recognized also fades with age, allowing us to focus on what brings us true joy. Whether it's reading, creating, traveling, or simply being at peace with ourselves. Think about a moment when you felt the most at peace, perhaps sitting alone in nature, reading a book, or simply being lost in thought. Those moments didn't require anyone else to be meaningful. Take Bill Gates as an example. After decades of leading Microsoft, Gates chose to step away from daily business operations to focus on philanthropy. He found more fulfillment in giving back to the world rather than chasing corporate success. His happiness now comes from independence and meaningful work, not from external validation. Angela Merkel, one of the world's most powerful women, remained unbothered by trends, gossip, or political theatrics. Her independence from public opinion made her a strong and respected leader. After her retirement, she chose a simple, quiet life, demonstrating that happiness doesn't come from staying in the spotlight. Leonardo da Vinci, despite his fame, preferred solitude. He spent much of his time alone, absorbed in his studies, drawings, and inventions. His greatest works were created not through social engagement but through deep, independent thought. A real-life example of this transformation can be seen in Mrs. Li, A 75-year-old woman who once had a large group of friends and an active social life. Over time, she began to notice that most of her conversations were superficial and draining. People gossiped, complained, and rarely engaged in meaningful discussions. Eventually, she made a conscious choice to scale back on unnecessary connections, keeping only a few genuine friendships. She embraced solitude, spending her days gardening, reading, and practicing meditation. Most importantly, she prioritized her own happiness, no longer worrying about social expectations. The result? She felt happier and more fulfilled than ever before, realizing that true happiness comes not from being surrounded by people, but from being at peace with oneself. Independence in aging is not the same as loneliness, it's freedom. Many fear that cutting back on relationships will lead to loneliness. But the truth is that loneliness comes from relying on others for happiness, while freedom comes from finding happiness within yourself. Aging is not about losing people, it's about gaining clarity on what matters, who is worth keeping, and where true happiness lies. 3. Quality over quantity in friendships. In today's fast-paced world, the concept of quality over quantity is often overlooked, especially when it comes to relationships. With social media and instant communication, staying in touch with hundreds of people is easier than ever. However, the true value of friendship lies not in the number of people we interact with, but in the depth of the connections we form. A Zen saying, "When drinking tea, just drink tea," highlights the importance of being fully present in the moment. This simple wisdom can be directly applied to friendships. A single deep conversation with a true friend is far more enriching than countless shallow exchanges. When we engage in meaningful conversations, we experience a sense of belonging and understanding. These moments are grounded in quality, allowing us to connect on a deeper level and experience true empathy. In contrast, superficial conversations often leave us feeling empty, regardless of the volume of interactions. Consider the impact of a single heartfelt conversation with someone you trust, one that offers insight, comfort, or clarity. This type of interaction can profoundly affect your emotional well-being, much more so than endless casual exchanges with acquaintances. Choosing quality over quantity means that a few deeply connected friends can provide more emotional fulfillment than hundreds of casual ones. To foster genuine friendships, we must be willing to invest in the relationships that matter most. This involves listening deeply, which means not merely waiting for your turn to speak, but being fully present and understanding the other person's perspective. Responding with empathy. Leaders like Oprah Winfrey excel in this area. Her ability to listen and connect deeply with others has earned her a loyal and profound circle of friends. Appreciating small moments is also key. Meaningful friendships don't need dramatic acts of generosity. A simple, quiet moment, like sharing a meal or walking in nature, can build stronger bonds than any extravagant gift or event. Mahatma Gandhi understood the value of simplicity and often emphasized the importance of humble moments with loved ones as a foundation for deep relationships. Another crucial aspect is letting go of toxic relationships. As we age, we become more selective about who we spend time with, recognizing when a relationship is draining rather than uplifting. Removing toxic people from our lives is an act of self-care, not cruelty. Michelle Obama speaks about this in her memoir, where she shares her decision to distance herself from negative influences, focusing instead on those who bring positivity and support into her life. Bill Gates provides a great example of choosing quality over quantity in friendships. Despite his immense wealth and status, Gates has always emphasized the importance of deep, authentic relationships over superficial ones. His close friendship with Warren Buffett, built on mutual respect and intellectual stimulation, is a prime example of how a few meaningful connections can be far more valuable than countless social interactions. The Zen approach to friendships encourages us to fully experience each moment with the people we care about. It's about putting away distractions and embracing the present. When we do this, we discover that the relationships that truly matter are the ones that allow us to grow, learn, and find peace, not necessarily the ones that occupy our time the most. In the end, cultivating meaningful, genuine friendships requires patience, presence, and a willingness to embrace quality over quantity. It's about finding those who add true value to our lives and nurturing those connections with intention and care. 4. The beauty of stillness and reflection. In a world filled with constant noise and distractions, stillness and reflection often seem elusive. Yet, Buddhism teaches us that stillness is not about escaping life but rather about diving deeper into it. It's about creating the mental space to understand ourselves and the world around us on a much more profound level. Taking time to pause and reflect is crucial to living a fulfilling life. It's an opportunity to step back from the chaos and truly ask ourselves the tough questions. What have we learned from life? What brings us genuine happiness? What legacy do we wish to leave behind? By asking these questions, we can better align ourselves with our values and purpose. This process of reflection allows us to grow emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually. It's a chance to gain clarity on what truly matters. And it helps us prioritize the things that will bring lasting fulfillment. In our busy lives, we often seek distractions to avoid confronting our inner thoughts and feelings. However, true growth comes when we allow ourselves to sit in the silence and listen to our inner voice. Stillness allows us to process past experiences, acknowledge our emotions, and become more in tune with our deepest desires. This doesn't mean isolation in a negative sense, rather, it's a way of becoming more connected with ourselves, understanding what drives us, and nurturing our own well-being. Take the example of Nelson Mandela, whose time in prison was marked by solitude and reflection. Despite being physically confined, Mandela used this stillness to reflect on his life, his beliefs, and the future of South Africa. His time in solitude helped him develop the inner strength and wisdom needed to lead the nation toward reconciliation and peace. His personal reflection in isolation was key to his transformation into the leader who would inspire the world. Solitude doesn't equate to loneliness. In fact, solitude can be a source of great strength and insight. When we are alone, free from external influences, we can hear our own thoughts clearly and reconnect with our core values. Solitude offers a unique opportunity to reassess our life's path without the noise of others' expectations. This kind of self-connection is crucial for cultivating inner peace and fulfillment. Consider Steve Jobs, whose Zen-inspired approach to life and work was rooted in quiet reflection. Jobs often took time to retreat into nature or spend time in meditation. These moments of stillness helped him hone his creativity and focus, allowing him to lead Apple to new heights. He understood that by reflecting deeply on his experiences, he could foster innovative thinking and clarity. One of the most profound questions we can ask ourselves is, what legacy do we want to leave behind? In a world focused on material success and external accomplishments, it can be easy to forget the importance of the intangible, the positive impact we have on others, the love we share, and the wisdom we impart. Taking the time to reflect on our legacy allows us to shift our focus from achievements to meaningful contributions. A great example of this is Mahatma Gandhi, whose legacy of peace, non-violence, and social justice continues to inspire generations. Gandhi spent much of his life in reflection and solitude, shaping his philosophy of non-violent resistance. His moments of quiet reflection allowed him to develop the inner peace needed to confront immense challenges, shaping the course of history. In today's fast-paced world, stillness and reflection are essential practices for personal growth and well-being. Whether through meditation, quiet walks in nature, or moments of deep contemplation, embracing stillness can bring us closer to our true selves. Just as great leaders like Mandela, Jobs, and Gandhi found wisdom in solitude, we too can find the clarity and peace we need to lead a more fulfilled life. By reflecting on our experiences, values, and legacy, we can gain deeper insight into the world and our place in it. Aging is often seen as a time of loss, of youth, of vitality, of the familiar faces that once surrounded us. But what if we shift our perspective? What if aging is not a loss at all, but rather a form of liberation? With age, we are given the opportunity to release ourselves from the pressures of seeking external validation and social approval. We no longer need to be defined by the number of people in our lives, or by the roles others expect us to play. Instead, we can embrace solitude as a gift, one that allows us to reconnect with ourselves, to reflect on our journey, and to discover what truly brings us joy. In our friendships, quality becomes more important than quantity. We no longer need a vast circle of acquaintances, we need those who truly understand us, who bring depth and meaning to our lives. And as we grow older, we can cultivate independence, the freedom to enjoy the simple things: a quiet morning, a good book, or the beauty of a sunset. Because in the end, true peace does not come from external circumstances. It comes from within. It comes from embracing who we are, at any age, and finding contentment in the present moment. Do you agree with this perspective? How do you see aging and solitude? Share your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear from you.